Welcome to the Lair, a place where interesting people you may know tell you things you didn't. So grab a chair and your favorite spice and get comfortable. There are no rules in the Lair, but there is Laura Babcock. You know her from TV, and she is not into media monogamy. Let's find out who else is in the Lair.
It's ridiculous. Anyway, we're here in the Lair with Alex Sevigny, Dr. Sevigny from McMaster. Many of your students would be listening to this and also on Twitter and be familiar with your tweets. Gabriella Braglia, who I think you had Dr. Sevigny as a professor at one point, right?
A few times.
What courses?
Communications 1 AO3, which was, what was it called?
Intro to Comms.
Intro to Comm. And in fourth year, we did news analysis.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Actually,
It's very tedious.
Really? Oh, I love it. I do it all day long. Your course is tedious. What a nice way to start.
Well,
it's a ringing endorsement.
It's meticulous. Yeah. You know, it's content analysis is an acquired taste. But it's an important function in public relations.
Do you think it's an acquired taste, or do you think it's a certain skill set? Like it's a certain brain. My brain is wired that way to examine word usage and examine content and compare it and contrast it to other content and the narrative and all that stuff. Do you think it's just the way some people are built?
Could be. I don't know the science behind that, but I mean, I certainly see that certain people take to it. And it's not always news junkies. It's not always the people that love the news that take to news analysis. You know, it's becoming with you know, now that social media news is moving to social media, it's becoming the central part of public relations research and communications research. In general.
Do you watch Reliable Sources on CNN?
Yes.
They were talking about Twitter on the weekend, and this show will run a little after we run it, but I'm sure the trends will continue even if we run this in a few weeks, if we air this. They were saying how essentially the blog, which was big a few years ago in American journalism because people would just hit refresh on the blogs and it was faster than any publication coming out, has now been totally usurped by Twitter. Because now reporters don't even bother with the blog. It's kind of, the blog is sort of for more wide-ranging or in-depth looks or opinions at things. Now everybody's tweeting. So we'll be talking to another guest in the Lair shortly, Joy Coleman, who's becoming, you know, a fantastic local news Twitterer, if you can use the word tweeter. And it's totally changed everything, right? I mean, being able to write a couple of columns or being able to write in television media a 60 or a 30 is one thing, but doing news in 140 characters, do you think that's where things are permanently going? And do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think that's where a big part of journalism is going. I do think that journalism is going to transform into more of a personal brand-based format for individual reporters. And I think we're going to see, for better or for worse, a lot more in-house journalism.
So when you say, hold on, personal brand-based, do you mean almost back to the columnist idea?
Yeah.
So we're sort of going full circle, from columnist to generalist back to columnist?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Right. And not only that, a lot of columnists who actually work for organizations. And so there's going to be the really interesting struggle to make sure that journalistic standards are maintained, right, in a sense, because so much of journalism is going to be produced in PR shops.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, so being someone who, we're sitting in a PR shop actually, and having been a reporter, I've always thought that no source is an accurate source. It's about the you know, the aggregate of sources. You kind of look at them, you parse through them, you figure out where the truth may lie, somewhere in between all of it. I don't know that people even believe journalists anymore. I mean, I don't think, and maybe I'm just being cynical, but I really think that when people read the newspaper, they say, oh yeah, sure, that's their editorial bias. I don't know that they expect the sort of good old-fashioned journalist anymore.
I completely agree. I think what's happening, and it's not the journalist's fault. I mean, if you speak to, I have many friends who are amazing professionals, I mean, in both public relations and journalism, but what's happening is with the professionalization of journalism, with the fact that you now need a master's degree to be a journalist, or you know, or we're moving towards that, or some sort of postgraduate degree of some kind.
Sure.
It's, you know, when you go through that much education, when you hang out with a certain group of people who know all the same types of people, the same cultural references, you talk to those people.
For sure.
And that's 30% of the population. It's not the other 70.
Well, it's always been a closed group. You know, back in the day, there was the press club in every city, and the journal. And even today, So let's just break this out a little bit to a local issue, which I think is fascinating. When the mayor's office I've made lots of opinions on this already publicly known, but they were looking at redoing their media policy and whether they floated out a trial balloon or whether or not it was, I don't know, just miscommunicated, whatever. The impression got out there that they were essentially saying, and it was mostly a follow-up radio show where the hole got dug deeper. They said, you don't get access to the mayor like a regular journalist, and you have to have a full-time job. You have to have a boss, someone that we can complain to. And I just listened to it, and it kind of confounded me. But you, please weigh in.
It doesn't make sense. This is the age of the citizen journalist,
Right.
and the blogger, the tweeter. Those are legitimate forms of citizen journalism.
Right.
The Twitter. You asked a question earlier about Twitter. Twitter's the new newswire.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
It's for a lot of people I know do news releases right onto Twitter, and who
Yeah.
are PR pros, for example.
For
you know,
sure.
and
For sure.
and there's
Why
a
would you go anywhere else when you can get that?
It's so much
Immediately.
faster, and you've got your immediate
well,
followers.
well, not only that.
That's how we are, though. We want it now.
Well, not only that, you know what fascinates me about Twitter, and the power of this is just people are just starting to figure it out. Journalists speak to journalists over Twitter. People,
Right.
Birds of a feather tweet together,
Yeah,
right?
I like it.
So what it is the rest of the public who's tuning in, following journalists, following PR pros. What they're doing is they're getting the backstage pass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They're getting the backstage pass, the politics, the backstage pass, what's going on in the press pool, and
Absolutely.
amazing.
Well, it's like the person I alluded to earlier who spoke on reliable sources said it is the conversation on Twitter for the news media, for the pundits, for the political parties. And what I find fascinating, talk about backstage pass, is I follow even groups that I don't align myself with ideologically, because I'm always fascinated to see how they develop stories and responses, etc. So one of the groups that I follow is the GOP RNC in the U.S., and they private tweeted me about a strategy following Obama's big speech on that he made about the Jobs America plan. So the fact that it was a DM suggested that they thought it was a private broadcast to their loyal. And I thought, you can't be that foolish to think that everybody who follows you is aligned with your ideology.
They assume it, right?
But that's just such a strategic error.
Well, do you know what that comes back to? It comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is content and social media analysis. And the potential of analyzing who is saying what to whom, about whom, in what tonality, positive, negative, neutral, in what geographic context. We're just at the very cusp of that revolution.
That would be hard to do it through social media, though, right?
But not if you track people's, one of the things that I find interesting is that how people communicate, right? Once you follow someone on Twitter long enough, you sort of understand their tone and when they're off
You
their
get a
tone
sense
and
of
when
their
they're
personality.
Yeah, when they're
You
being
do.
fake and when they're in their time of day and everything else.
Sarcasm,
Yeah, so
whatever.
it's almost like any other. It's like watching body language. What you see people doing in their relaxed state, as soon as you see them doing something different, it's a tell of some kind.
Yeah.
I find on Twitter you can almost develop a sense of people's tells if you follow them.
Absolutely, and there's no reason why you can't automate that. And once you automate that, you're going to have huge databases that can correlate the kinds of things we've said over Twitter, who we are, where we said them, in what geolocation, who we were aiming them at, and then you can have really targeted
But do you think
communication.
that's already, somebody mentioned to me before, the creeping in factor of it's almost subversive on Twitter. There are, it seems to me, I don't know if you call them spiders or whatever on Twitter, that are marketing now.
Yeah.
I notice keywords that I've mentioned maybe the day previous or a few hours previous, and suddenly I'm getting a
And you get
follower in that
spams.
area, and
If you
the
mention
spams
the
are coming.
iPhone or Apple,
Yeah.
you always get spam after that.
But even without the hashtag.
Oh,
you
oh,
know,
no, even it's just
they
a keyword. Yeah.
Scanning and following.
Absolutely, but imagine the next step. The next step is a computer program that's based on a person's history, or actually thousands of people's history of tweeting, that can actually predict how you're going to react to a news release, whether it's going to be positive, negative, neutral, and whether you should be mentioned in the news release when it's tweeted out.
But that's something, though, instinctively prior to the technology that you'd be able to do anyway in PR.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you can't
Agreed.
get a read on how people are
You
going to react to a
should be
press
able to
release,
do.
you shouldn't be in PR.
But our
I
PR
agree
people
100%.
rely now on technology to
Yeah, to
answer
do
those
that for them.
questions for
Well,
them.
I guess it does it en masse, right? In PR, whenever we get approached to do PR in some communities in the U.S. and that, I'll have a look at the issue and I'll be like, you know what? This needs a local PR strategist. There's just something sometimes about needing a good read on the local community that PR 101 or 1001 can't possibly make you skilled enough at. So I think what it does is it allows you to have that same kind of interpretation of what's happening on a much broader foreign scale, if you will, right?
Yep. Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is to see the headlines from around the world. Oftentimes there's some newscast that on a major event will show you how the world covered it. And there's something still, I don't know, maybe it's a romantic notion about newspapers. It's like there can be 1,000 tweets on the subject, there can be a million posts,
But they're forgotten like that.
what was the front page?
But you asked me how I got passionate about communication, and when I was tiny, sadly my maternal grandfather died very young, but he was a news junkie, and there are pictures of us sitting together holding the news open with the newspaper like that, and him with his cigar, and me just sitting there,
Do you think there'll still be newspapers in the future?
I do. I think that will always be a format that some people choose.
Yeah.
Whether there are newspapers that are distributed widely, or whether they become a luxury item, is an open question.
I think they're powerful because of the juxtaposition they provide with blogs and with Twitter. I imagine a world without that juxtaposition, and it doesn't seem like
Seems
it
like
would
it's
work
almost
as well.
elusive
They
somehow.
wouldn't be as powerful, without that opposing force.
Because you're right. Because I think that's a great point. Because sometimes the digital inundation it's a big blur, right? But every morning it's almost like a ritual in my house. I have to be the one to open the paper. I can't. If anybody else flips through it, it's like you ruined my day. I have to feel that. Oh, I don't know why. It's weird. You're the same way.
Absolutely, I love the newspaper.
I have to feel it present itself to me somehow.
It's true, and I love opening it. I love looking at it. I love looking at the layout. I love looking at the ads. I like to think, what intelligence went into laying this out today?
Yeah.
And to me, it's almost like if you just go on Twitter, which is great, you get everything quickly, and then you can go to links and stuff. But it's almost like a piece of art where there were a million fights and decisions about layout and things cut and dropped, and I want to see what they finally came up with, and then they're held accountable to. So it begs the question: what do you think of the latest format change of the Hamilton Spectator?
Well, newspapers have to change, and they have to move forward in ways that they think will please their market, and that time will tell. I don't know.
Did you have a gut reaction as a fellow aficionado of the written news?
Not really. I thought it was okay.
See, I usually like modern layouts, but my first instinct was that it reminded me, and actually Rob said it, of the way computer news is done on a computer website, like on a Huffington Post or something like that.
But I thought that was done on purpose.
I did too, but I tweeted out when the spec was trolling on Twitter for what people thought. I tweeted, if I wanted to read the news online, I wouldn't bother buying a newspaper. I like the difference. I like that opposing force. And actually what was really interesting to me was Emma, one of the reporters at the Spec, retweeted that critique of her paper to her followers, and I thought that's quite brave. It's sort of me, that was kind of like a melding of worlds that she did that.
You know what? I agree. I'm a bit of a traditionalist when it comes to papers. I love the look of the Wall Street Journal. I love the look at the old Globe and Mail. Actually,
I was going to say, do you like the new Globe?
Less than I like the old Globe.
The feel of it it's very bizarre.
Well, there was a photo we took when we were in New York. We went to New York City in July as a little fun holiday, and we were sitting at this breakfast bar in Soho, and I took a photo of my little Soho breakfast with the New York Times.
Yeah.
There's something about that.
Well, me too. Or one of my favorite.
We're such geeks.
one of my favorite.
Here's my newspaper.
One of my favorite profile pics on Twitter is it was just before I was going to go. I was going to Georgetown for some reason last year, and I was just reading the Washington Post in a cafe, having a coffee, and I'm thinking,
very journally.
This is Alex in paradise.
And it's funny to see how different places lay out their newspapers, or like when we were in the cabs in New York City, and they have like the little TVs that you can watch, and every story was horrific.
It was all crime.
It was all crime.
The top 3 stories when we left the airport, I remember we talked about, there was an Army-related story, a 9/11 terrorist-related story, and there was a murder of a chopping up of a child in the Bronx or something.
Just horrific, but it's just interesting to see how, we talked about this in class, like what different cities focus on, what different countries focus on.
It just almost felt cliche somehow.
I was going to say, and somebody said they found news analysis tedious.
She's working in a PR firm. How tedious?
I'm allowed to my honest opinion.
You mentioned a Twitter pic. I've got to ask about the turtleneck choice. in your tweet pic because it makes you look as because with tweet pics they're kind of important, right?
Sure, yeah.
They really send an impression. Like we all pick them very closely. So I'm wondering why you picked that shot.
Well, what does it say to you?
It says that you're less relaxed than you are currently. You're a little stuffy, and you don't come across that way when I meet you.
That's interesting, because I actually picked that to not come across as a sort of stuffy.
But a turtleneck kind of man? Come on. The only time turtlenecks are okay are with a great big wrap on a beautiful woman in the fall, right?
Or if you're like a
You're a
poet
hipster.
or something.
Yeah, if you're like a hipster, if you'd had like a beret or you're doing some beatnik poetry on the side, it would have been cool. I'm just curious because other than Steve Jobs, I haven't seen anybody else rock the black turtleneck on Twitter. So I'm just curious.
Well, I mean,
being as image conscious.
To be honest with you, I love turtlenecks, and I wear black. It's slimming.
Sure. No, I was just curious because I knew that you wouldn't put something up in a public domain that wasn't something you thought through.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, I'm French. Well, I'm half French, half Macedonian,
right.
but I mean, culturally.
So a beret with the turtleneck would have been perfect.
That might have been a bit too much, But no, I've always worn turtlenecks, and it's.
I'm just picking on you only because, as you know, it's like an icon, right?
Yeah.
People recognize you by it, the color saturation it has. Like I've noticed some people flip up their twit pic like a Kardashian, and she's one of the leaders in Twitter globally. Some other people stick with something, some go totally abstract. Somebody in the room here, at Communicator, his twit pic is, which cartoon is that on yours?
It's a Simpsonized. When that
yeah,
Simpson cartoon
it's a Simpsonized version of you, kind of, right? Yeah, so people do a lot but it seems like it's a very deliberate choice. So I was just curious the thinking behind it. It made you look very erudite, intelligent, but just not as laid back as I know you to be when we talk.
Okay, well, maybe I should change it.
Well, or not.
Maybe I should go with a black T-shirt.
Yeah. Well, you know what? As I know, Joey Coleman is selling the Dissidents T-shirts in Hamilton. You got to get a Dissident shirt.
But it just goes to show what clothing choices how they can communicate.
Oh, for sure.
Things.
Well, I remember New York City, a picture of you said I got to make that my Twitter profile, and I know for myself, I picked this shot of me laughing at the mayor's roast because it wasn't even a full face shot, but they really are snapshots that say a lot about our personalities.
Well, and I guess also to be honest with you, to get the sort of professor image across as well, because there is professors are either wearing ties, dressed as hippies, or
so you didn't want to go with the
or wearing
with
turtlenecks,
the sports jacket with the what is it
with
the leather,
or like the cord
no,
patches.
that's not me.
And you're not wearing sandals in the dead of winter.
So I was thinking to myself, let's see, sandals, hippie look, sort of granola.
Or you went with the other side, and hey, you captured the artist erudite look. I was just curious about it. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's what I should do. But I gotta say though, it's the program is awesome. I've grown to be incredibly passionate about McMaster and about our students. Our students, it's amazing. We set out to create a communications program with a difference, and I think we did.
What's the difference?
The difference is that we integrate a large writing component. So there's
God.
Yeah, huge writing component. There's a measurement component, so our graduates are, at least they have a numbers literacy.
Yeah, qualitative and quantitative.
Yeah, qualitative and quantitative.
Writing is huge. Still 95% of the work we do is writing related.
And we have a practical side to the program that a lot of communications programs don't go. They don't go there. They want to be strictly academic, and we're proud to be affiliated and to celebrate the PR industry. And we really do in our program.
Yeah, well, because the PR industry is creating the narrative for the consumer and for the world, and oftentimes if you extend the PR into the political sphere, communication people working on political campaigns run the narrative of the entire nation.
I agree, and not only that, I'm convinced that within a few decades, who knows how quickly, perhaps even a decade or 15 years, public relations will start to look a lot like law in terms of its importance in our society.
Let's flip to politics for a second, because what I've never done is be a communications person on a campaign, just because I'm not partisan and I'm still extremely cynical about party politics in general. So you're dyed-in-the-wool liberal, or have you been your whole life?
No, I've actually voted for all four major parties. I've voted for Tories and Liberals and NDP and the
And
Green
they
Party.
let you be a communications manager on a campaign if you've got that background?
Well, it's a Liberal Party. It's a brokerage party.
I was going to say, Conservatives would not let you near them with that kind of pedigree.
And I've worked. I work mostly on Liberal campaigns. I like philosophically, apart from big L Liberal, I'm a small L Liberal. Right? I believe that the individual should have the opportunity in a society to maximize his or her potential, how he or she wants to define it.
So get the government out of the bedroom, get them out of our business, but give us enough support to get through.
Right. And give us enough support to not only get through hard times, but also to pull us out of difficult situations.
And don't you think that's most of Canada? I mean, our Conservative Party has a majority, but they're not Republican or Libertarian. They're pretty much down that stream.
Absolutely. I think that that's true. I also think that our bureaucracy is very much that way. With its inherent sense of fairness and its sense of loyalty to the Canadian people. And I think the bureaucracy is kind of Canada's permanent government. So regardless of whether you have an NDP government or a Liberal government or a Tory government, the bureaucracy will sort of keep things going and keep things on an even keel.
You do a lot of television punditry in addition to that, and I saw that smile, and I love the reaction people have to things, because television punditry has to be a passion, right? You have to love it or you're not very good at it. Your laugh seemed to indicate to me that you really enjoy it.
I really like it. You know what, I see it as a part of being a public intellectual, stepping out of the university, showing people that professors are human beings, trying to be...
Yeah.
What's that? Wool-wearing, turtleneck.
That's right. Turtleneck-wearing human beings.
You do things outside of your office.
All he needs is a cigar and some really bad hush puppies.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And a house coat. I need a house coat.
Yeah. People listening. I always forget we're not on TV. He's got boat shoes on. Yeah, a house coat. Yeah, that's right.
but it's funny,
So you get out of academia. You
Yes.
get to, and is that really important to you?
Yes.
I know when I thought about a career in teaching, I thought I would go crazy if I wasn't part of the cut and thrust.
I think every professor should be part of the public discourse of their field.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about this. I think every professor should try to speak to publics outside the university.
Well, then it takes down that stereotype if you can't teach, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm teaching and I'm doing, and I'm learning as I'm going.
Yes.
And it's an important thing. So I could keep you all, 2 pundits, 3 pundits, multiple pundits in the room. We could go all day. Alex, fascinating speaking with you.
Oh, pleasure.
And I'm glad that you get out of academia and you do things like the Laircast. You're the first McMaster. We've talked to Marvin Ryder, but he's always been sort of out there. When the team here, the production team, said, you have to talk to one of our professors, my initial thought was, oh, God, do I really want to talk to a professor for the very stereotypes we cited? But then I remembered meeting you at the Hamilton Club. You came out to, I think, the Party for Young Professionals that we did. And so I'm glad you're out there. I think it does great service for McMaster, and it sounds like you're doing a great program.
Well, thank you, Lauren. I think this is a great initiative that you've started. I think it's been a real pleasure being here, and I'm honored that you invited me.
Well, it's a lot of fun. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for being
you.
a good sport. Turtleneck comments aside. You didn't know you were coming in for a fashion thing.
And I'm particularly, I also want to commend you for taking on our students and providing incredible mentorship and creating opportunity in Hamilton for McMaster students. That's so important.
Right now in the room we have 2 full-time MAC students and a co-op student from MAC. We had another co-op. It's not that I do it to have any sort of community, it's no sense of largesse. I do it because they're talented and bright. We get resumes from Ryerson all the time, resumes from all kinds of colleges in Ontario. In this field, there's no jobs, as you would know, or very few jobs, so we get tons of resumes. And I hire from MAC. I always hire based on the individual. The fact that they're from McMaster is just a nice added bonus. So I think that says more about MAC than me having some sort of a quota policy for McMaster grads. I really just take the resumes, meet the people. So it's more about the kind of people that you're recruiting and teaching and what they come out with than it is McMaster in particular. So thank you for the compliment, but I can't take it just as I'm not hiring MAC to help MAC. I'm hiring great people who come from MAC.
Well, that's a great compliment for us. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Compliments all the way around. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Doctor.
Pleasure.
Chats in the Lair is a Power Group production. Visit us at powergroup.ca or laircast.com, or check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.